Good evening. It is Wednesday, April the 19th, about 10:40 p.m. This is Shay Gibson with Weather Flow and Sail Flow, bringing you a wind and weather report for the Charleston Race Week 2017 from Thursday through Sunday. So we wish all the racers and organizers the best of luck this year. Excited to have you back, and also excited to have Sail Flow as your partner. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and talk about winds and weather. It looks like we're in for some southerly flow pretty much through the period. Daily builds are going to vary, so we're going to talk about that. We need to talk about sea breezing, and then also what may happen on Sunday to bring some stronger winds into the area. Last year we had northeast winds that were sort of really powerful to the area. This time around we may have just sort of a building flow each day, and something a little bit easier to deal with than the northeast wedge that we had last year. So let's go ahead and talk about the winds and weather. Right now what we have, looking at the surface map, we have remnants of an old front. This is an old backdoor front that dropped down through our area. It brought a lot of heavy rains today, a little bit of lightning, a couple of thunderstorms in the area, but that warm front is sitting just to our south. In fact, if we look at radar right now, things are pretty quiet out there. A couple of showers offshore. Looks like we have some humidity scatter showing up on radar. A little bit over in Atlanta, just north of the boundary. This boundary is going to sort of lift overnight as a warm front back through the area very slowly. So by the time we wake up in the morning, it may be somewhere right around here. We'll have a light westerly flow below that. We call that a zonal flow. It's very, very light though. Might be on the variable side. Might be northwesterly from land breezing. And then as time goes on, we do expect high pressure to build out in the Atlantic again, and we'll show that on the models here. In fact, we'll go ahead and take a look at the GFS model and see what the trend will be. Now, if we start at initialization hour, which is midnight tonight, the midnight models do come out in a little while, but I'm not going to stay up for that because I'm going to be up early in the morning to do the 7 a.m. update for our pro forecast. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and run this forward in time, and here's where high pressure starts to reorganize in the Atlantic. This is the one that eroded and allowed that cold front to lay across North Carolina and drift to the south. It fell apart and basically allowed that to happen. Well, tomorrow this high starts to build back into the coastline again. It reorganizes and becomes a little bit more robust, especially into Friday. So as we go into time with the GFS, you can see that high sort of builds. Here's Friday afternoon. It's a little bit further south, but that means that the ridge axis is further south as well, and above that axis is where the winds turn south-southwest to southwest, and that's what the sea breezes can kind of build on. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the sea breezes. We'll look over the area in sail flow, and I'll use this as kind of a map. So what we have is, we have these light easterly winds right now. We have the southeasterly flow down here in Georgia, which means the front is somewhere right about here. When we get into sea breezes and southerly winds, we think of a sea breeze, it's a cold front that advances inland as the day goes on. So you have air rising inland, and then you have ocean water that is coming into the coastline to replace that air that's rising. So the pressure is actually dropping right along the coastline, and the sea breeze front is advancing inland. So what we need for all the key components for the sea breeze is for this front to strengthen. We need upper return flow aloft in the atmosphere to cool and condense, fall out back over the ocean, and circulate back into the coast. And so this is what's called the sea breeze circulation. When you have the front that moves onto the coastline, air is rising, it's going aloft, back out over the ocean and back into the coast. That is what's called your sea breeze circulation, and that's what goes faster and faster as the day goes on, depending on the strength of the upper flow. And one of the ways that we look at this upper flow is by the jet stream. And if we back up to tomorrow's jet stream, we see kind of a weak westerly upper flow right here. Not very much. Usually at the lower levels we may see something a little bit stronger than that, and that's about where we want it. We want it somewhere below this 300 millibar jet stream map, enough to give that upper return flow for the circulation. So it's a little bit of a dynamic science behind the sea breezes, but that's sort of guidance to go into what is going to occur this weekend. So if we look at the NAM3, we'll go ahead and take a quick look at the precipitation outlook. It looks like we have a few chances for showers. We'll wait for this to finish at Saturday morning and then restart again. You can see a little bit of shower activity overnight, then things sort of dry out around that high pressure, especially the coastal areas. We'll get the coastal dry line. Drier air equals a better sea breeze or more successful sea breeze. And then here we go with the winds. So we'll start this one over as well. It's Saturday morning, and then we start now. You can see the wind barbs lining up from the south, southwest, and then increasing in time as we get into Saturday morning. So that's kind of what to expect. And if we look at the area now, right now we have still these east-northeasterly winds. That was sort of a trend today. We'll look over the Charleston area. It's sort of light and variable right now. Nothing really going on. We got that warm front to our south. And we're going to start looking at the model guidance for the next few days. So I'll pick the Fort Sumter front range light. In fact, I've got it loaded right here, and I'm going to blow this up. to where we can see a little bit better. So when you're looking at the sail flow model, you want to go to this map and you want to go to all details under a station. And then you can blow it up, zoom into it, do whatever you want, but you want to activate all these models to see all the models in the full model suite to see what they're going to do in the trend. So when we start looking at tomorrow, overnight tonight, you see all these light and variable winds. The models are pretty much in all disagreement, but the winds are very light overall. It doesn't really matter. As we get into tomorrow morning, though, you see the trend for that sort of westerly, general westerly direction. The NAM 3 says this. The WRF and the National Weather Service says that, northwest, but either way, it's westerly, light westerly flow, and then the sea breeze starts up right about here. They're all in agreement right around 2 o'clock p.m. The models do come in agreement even as early as 1 o'clock p.m. With that really weak westerly flow in the morning, especially if it's northwest, the sea breeze tends to advance on the coast a little bit earlier. So we could see that sea breeze come ashore right around 11:30 or 12 o'clock and turn those winds to the beach. Those are the sensors that you want to see first for the turn. And then we'll see those winds come up. Now you notice this one right here. This is the WeatherFlow WRF 2 kilometer. It's a very high resolution model. Maybe a little bit exaggerated, but that's also inside the coastal break. So this may very well, it may verify itself as far as tomorrow goes by getting into the low teens by early afternoon and then getting up near mid-teens by late in the afternoon and kind of holding that nocturnal jet overnight. It was right on with nocturnal jetting the last couple nights. So that may very well be the case. But either way, we'll be watching for somewhere around 10 to 12 knots with potential for mid-teens to develop tomorrow afternoon. Now, as we get into Friday, we'll move a little bit forward for guidance. And you see that the models are pretty much all in agreement with south-southwest flow for the sea breezes. Now, the line stops here, but with a strengthened profile for the sea breeze circulations on Friday, especially with the westerly winds aloft sort of increasing, we could see that number come up to here just inside the harbor. We could be seeing 15 to 18 knots versus this sort of 10 to 14 knot range that is suggesting for the peak speeds on Friday afternoon. So we'll have to watch to see what the sea breeze profile looks like then as well. But I'm going to call for, I'd say 13 to 17 knots on that day. I'm going a little bit above the model values just based on knowing some of the area, knowing what the return flow could be aloft, and knowing what the heat exchange is from the ocean to the land. So also we'll go forward into Saturday, and that's when we see speeds may kind of weaken a little bit. We see sort of a general curve. This is getting out in a couple more days, so nothing's for certain. But we see that straight south-southwest flow in association with the sea breezes. And once again, we have about 10 to 14 knots. I could say maybe a little bit shallower, 12 to 16 knots for Saturday, because that cold front that may lay across to our north may weaken the winds just a tad. But as we get into Sunday, this is where things get a little bit tricky, because we go back to the surface map. And this area low pressure that's going to be coming across from the west, across Texas, is going to develop right here over the Appalachian Mountains. And it's supposed to develop pretty well along basically what's called a negatively tilting trough. And then these southwest winds come up ahead of it. They couple with the sea breezes, and then we also get what's called low-level jetting. And just inside the harbor mouth is where a lot of that jetting occurs. So we'll get, a lot of times, let me back out of this to smooth it. We'll get this general southwest flow ahead of a low pressure system and cold front, and then you have these warmer land masses right here that really help jet those winds. It helps that surface mixing. Our sea surface temperatures are still about 72 to 73 degrees. We're expecting upper 80s for highs, so the disparity between the two tends to cause a little bit of decoupling along the beaches where that flow is straight in off the water, versus right here where the land is, where there's some instability mixing over the water. That tends to get the winds up even more. So, we may be looking at Sunday as being an 18 to 22 knot day, especially across these zones, a little bit further offshore, out in the middle of the harbor, and over by the Yorktown, over by Crab Bank Island. These areas are probably most susceptible to seeing the strongest winds, and then even uprivers as well. The stronger jets tend to pulse inland too. So that's something to really, really look forward to for Sunday. Something the models would not pick up on just yet, but we'll have to see what the profile is on that area of low pressure. The models do suggest this right here, so they're saying mid-teens. I'm going to bring that up just a few knots. I'm going to bring that up to 18 to 22 knots, somewhere in this range for Sunday afternoon. So we'll see what happens. But here's our temperatures. Pretty comfortable the next few days. Actually, it gets kind of warm this weekend. We're getting into the upper 80s, basically inland. But our sea surface temperatures, like I said, are about 72 to 73 degrees. In fact, let me see if I can go to sail flow and activate the water. Sea surface temperatures. And we can get a decent idea here. Looking at about 72, 73, and as we get into this weekend, we may be even looking at 74, possibly 75 degrees. So that's going to help with some of that mixing of the sea breeze as well. But yeah, the air temperature is pretty pretty warm the next few days all the way through the period, so it looks like pretty good weather. Nothing too cold, nothing too hot, especially if you're on the wire. It's going to feel pretty good. And that's going to do it for this version of the forecast. It's pretty detailed, but that lays some groundwork for the next forecast to come. They'll be a little bit less detailed in dynamics, and we'll get straight to the point and cover just the basics for the wind. And hope everybody has a good race tomorrow, or for tomorrow morning for those that are waking up and seeing this. Good luck to you, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.